When we talk about human beings, first of all, the fact is that human beings have always lived in a world of change. But it seems that in the past few decades, the world has been changing faster than ever. That perception can be there because of human modifications of the planet. And the pace of those human modifications on the planet is increasing. So when you look at those human modifications, you see the result is that at least temporarily, the power and consumptive patterns of a billion or so people have been enormously enhanced. About 1 billion are, at least temporarily, living the life. And then you've got another couple of billion of the world's population that are doing all right, materially speaking. Meanwhile, you have a few billion who live in hopelessness. So what's happened over the past few decades is a massive explosion of science and technology. And the result has been a great increase in human ability to manipulate resources and the natural world. Now, how is that turning out? You all know. There are some severe consequences. The yoga texts would point out, especially the Bhakti yoga texts, would point out that something is off track. When we look at the graduate study to Bhagavad Gita, that is Srimad Bhagavatam, it talks about a distorted aim of life, which is leading to such havoc, benignly described as human modification of the planet and its resources. This distorted aim of life means that the thrust of human energy has been misdirected toward massive extractiveness, massive industrialization, so-called bending nature to our will. And then we suddenly find out nature has its own will, so to speak, and is now bending us. This is a very pivotal time for your generation, especially, because we old timers will move on. We relics of the 60s and 70s, we'll move on. But you all are stuck with a planet that basically my generation has wrecked. So this crisis is a golden opportunity for you to rethink the entire human situation. Reimagine it. Visualize something else. Try something else. It's quite obvious that whether you accept the reality of karma or not, the human species is undergoing severe reactions. The question is, how is it that the masses of human beings, with their unprecedented technological capacity, now threaten to overwhelm Earth's ability to sustain what is a global civilization, whether we like it or not. Everything is so interlinked and interconnected. So the Earth's ability to sustain human beings is being destroyed by human beings. It's an interesting study. It makes for interesting research. How one species, Homo sapiens, has become so powerful that it can hinder the ability of the Earth's environment to support so much of life, including our own life. So this extraordinary ability to modify nature, modify the planet, means that human beings have become a geophysical force. And we're now facing the consequences of that. Now, keep in mind, number one, there haven't always been the numbers of human beings. And some persons point to that as a major part of the problem. Too many people. Like, for example, if you go back to, let's go back 2,000 years. It is said that there were about 250 to 350 million people, human beings on the planet, around the time that Christ is said to have been here. And then by 1650, human numbers reached 500 million. By 1850, the population of the world had doubled to reach 1 billion. And then we have the extraordinary urbanization. You not only have billions of human beings, but you have them more and more living in cities. Africa and Asia are the only places left with a majority rural population, and that's changing very quickly. If you look at the year 1850, if you could go up in a satellite, which you couldn't do in the year 1850, if you could though, if you were in a satellite, spaceship, something, and you look back down at Earth, so to speak, you'd have seen only 3 beacons of light at night. There were only 3 cities in the year 1850 that had more than 1 million people: Beijing, London, and Paris. So you'd have seen those lights of those urban centers from space, from your vantage point, if you're able to have it in the year 1850. Now we move ahead to the year 2000, 20 years ago. There were 371 cities with a population of more than 1 million. Now, it's over 550. And the prediction is that by 2030, there'll be over 700. So some people say that the problem with human beings is the number. There are too many of them. We're burdening the earth, and that's why the earth is, so to speak, rebelling. Nature is chastising us because we've reproduced too much. The yoga knowledge says something different. And we should think about it. The Bhakti Yoga knowledge says that the problem is not the quantity of the population, it's the quality of the population. This is a very important point. The Bhakti Yoga preceptors, such as His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, have always pointed out that if human beings are in the right consciousness, nature can handle countless billions of them. But what we see today is nature striking back at bad consciousness. Of course, when we talk about consciousness, we're talking about something that is a mystery for the Western world. Is consciousness just a material phenomenon? Or is it an illusion? Maybe it doesn't exist at all. Meanwhile, while we're struggling, trying to understand whether we have consciousness or not, whether it's an illusion or not, or does it emanate from the brain or what, while we're struggling to come to grips with that, we conscious beings are destroying our own habitat. So please, at this point in our discussion, keep in mind that a fundamental precept in bhakti knowledge is that according to the quality of the consciousness of the human species, nature reciprocates accordingly. So the Bhakti Yoga preceptors disagree that the problem is the quantity. And indeed, when you think about it, by our stressing that so-called problem of population growth, we're hiding from the guilt that we should feel. We're burdening the earth planet with our consciousness. So therefore, the theme of our discussion tonight, humans, why and what to do. Why am I a human? Why are you a human? Did the thought ever cross your mind? And if you can understand why you're a human being, then you might be able to figure out what is it that you should do. Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam teach us that the human body is like a junction. It's a crossroads. You can use it to go higher or lower. It's a very crucial junction. It has the developed consciousness by which you can participate in a discussion like we're having now. The Bhakti Yoga knowledge teaches us that if we misuse this valuable instrument, this valuable tool known as the human body, nature takes this very seriously and inflicts upon us all kinds of complicated problems. It's a reaction to our avoiding our mandate. The human body gives you a mandate. Politicians, Especially these days, it's the season for politicians to talk a lot. They're always talking about the mandate. The people have given us a mandate. Well, the human body has given the biggest mandate. It goes like this. You have the human body, you must become enlightened and self-realized. It's not a frill or an accessory. That is the defining principle of the human being, the Homo sapien. I've got this human form of life with its advanced consciousness. I must become self-realized. At least let us make progress with this human tool so we can realize we're different from the body and mind. That understanding is kindergarten in spiritual development, but yeah, we need to go to kindergarten. Without that foundational understanding, we can't move higher. And you see so many human beings are absorbed in body identification as the priority or the exclusive reality. I am this body, you are that body. And this mirage is taken so seriously. There are 5 variables which are all external and have nothing to do with the real you. There is, and they all begin with a C, by the way. So that way you can easily remember this illusory quintet. Number 1, class. It's external. It can change so easily. Number 2, culture. Number 3, country. Countries change names. Countries are carved apart. Number 4, color. You may say, well, the bodily color doesn't change. Aha. But how the color is perceived changes depending on which part of the world you're in. Most Americans can't click on that. People in different parts of the world have different perceptions according to their stereotype of what a certain body tint means or doesn't mean. Just like if I walk around Los Angeles, people will classify me according to my looks one way. If I walk around New Zealand, people, their social molding is such that don't make an immediate judgment. Wait till he opens his mouth, then we can judge by the accent. It sounds really radical to Americans who are so convinced. I know a body when I see a body, and I know. Oh, have you done a DNA analysis? So it's interesting. Here in New Zealand, they'll look, but they'll check themselves. And then they'll wait for you to open your mouth. And okay, where's the accent coming from? Is it coming from London? Is it coming from Nigeria? Is it coming from the USA? And maybe it doesn't matter to them. So again, class, country, culture, color, and creed. People change religions all the time. Just like in the USA, amongst young adults, the fastest growing religion is the nuns, N-O-N-E-S. No resemblance of anything, nothing that resembles any organized or formal religious identity. In fact, why even think about it? This is called, in case you haven't heard, this is called apatheism, a combination of two words, apathy and theism. In other words, you're not an atheist, you're not an agnostic. It's just like, hey, I never think about the stuff. It's apatheism. Like, it's the last thing on my mind. God, religion, spiritual. Hey, my football team in high school, we got a spiritual team going. And we score a touchdown. Wow, what a feeling. Ah, my girlfriend, yeah, we got, she's spiritual, sure. It's apatheism. Who cares to think about this stuff of religion and God? So this bodyism is a mirage that has entranced billions. What's my class? What's my creed? What's my color? What's my culture? What's my country? It all changes so easily. You can change it, and the person who's perceiving you can have different perceptions than other persons who perceive the same so-called you. So when we try to organize human society based on such false propositions accepted as bedrock reality, we have massive problems, and we can never have unity. You'll just get a phantasmagoria, like a comet shooting through the sky. That kind of unity. Oh, yes, we're united, we're together. And then, hey, what happens? We're at each other's throats now. Because you can't have solid human progress and human benign relationships. You can't have them endure as long as the foundation is so false, this bodyism. So we look at the urbanization. As we said, by 2030, it's projected there'll be over 700 cities with more than 1 million persons living. We look at these cities and you see just concentrated bodyism. Our cities have failed to uplift the people. So how can you expect harmony, cooperation, when the populace is lacking the finer qualities in life? So now we're at a point where the human species has transformed most of Earth's land, the surface that is. It's disrupted the life in the oceans and significantly altered the atmosphere. And who is able to stop this? Some people say, look, human beings should just do their thing and nature will repair the situation somehow. It's not our concern. Or what so many in my generation have said is that it's the problem of the younger generations. We had our problems, our share, World War I, World War II, etc. We had to deal with that. So the younger generations need their fair share of problems. This is called, by the way, intergenerational tyranny. I obliterate, I destroy your future. I'm not going to be around. You guys got to handle it somehow. We handled our problems. You handle these problems that we left you. It's like that with each passing generation. You always get your inheritance of problems. This is intergenerational tyranny. A sympathetic, compassionate person thinks, what kind of planet am I leaving to the children, to the grandchildren? What did they do that they have to inherit such a mess? All right. We did speak about these critical times as an enhanced opportunity for re-envisioning the human mission, for reimagining the entire human endeavor. In that sense, you're living in very exciting times. Necessity is the mother of invention. But we have to first deal with some kind of false pride that human beings have, that they are superior. You see, within the human species, there's not simply one so-called race thinking it's superior to another. No, overall, there's this human hubris that human beings are the crown of creation. Could be, but right now we're blowing it badly. And we shouldn't use that human hubris, that pride, to hide from the havoc we're causing. So many people in our particularly Western societies, the first world I'm speaking of, promote its superiority. But what are the yardsticks employed that point to such superiority? How do you evaluate? How do you compare? How do you decide which society is the most advanced? I'll throw out some possibilities for you. It's very interesting, to sift through the whole human endeavor and see where it's leading. We don't have to think too much because we're being hit in the face with so many human-made crises. If we evaluate the superiority of a particular society in terms of military capabilities, you know what's number one. The USA spends more money on its military every year than the next 7 nations combined. I'd have to say, speaking from a land where there is universal health care, that it would probably be a good idea that the USA invests in an adequate healthcare system for everyone, because my COVID-19 is your COVID-19. COVID-19 doesn't respect income. It doesn't respect ethnicity, although it's been shown that lower income and persons of color have a harder time coping with the disease, the virus. Still, the virus, my point is, the virus creeps everywhere. And so obviously, if you have a strong health care system for everyone, you can much more easily deal with pandemics. But still, in terms of military capability, if that's the sign of human superiority or social superiority, USA is number one by a wide margin. What about life expectancy? Japan leaves the USA well behind. What about levels of literacy? There are a few Eastern European countries that claim 100% literacy. And there is data to support that. That claim, in other words, may not be far from the mark. What about the most equitable income distribution? You hear a lot of talk these days about inequality of wealth. Denmark, Japan, and Azerbaijan are in the top for income distribution, and that's equitable. What about the longest time without participating in a war? Certainly not the USA. It's Switzerland. And then what about happiness? The top positions change every few years, but you've got places like Mexico. Make sure we keep them out south of the border, build a wall. And Nigeria. US is way down on the list. Near the top, you've also got Denmark. So I'm giving you this information so that we can start to get beyond our pride as human beings, no matter where we're situated in the world, where we're from, where we are now. Let's get beyond that hubris and do a critical analysis of the human mission. This is very important in bhakti knowledge. That human beings have an individual and societal mandate for understanding the non-material reality. As an individual, you should be feeling that burden on your shoulders. We feel economic burdens, right? I've got to make the money. I've got to pay the mortgage. I've got to pay the rent. I've got to pay my college debts. But what about the biggest debt of all? I have a human body with its advanced consciousness. I must become enlightened. Some or other, I have to steer my life in that direction. This is not only an individual duty, it's also a societal duty. The yoga text will explain to you that society should be a place, an association where persons are inspired to move forward in their spiritual development. That means not simply religious belief. Well, I believe this. What do you believe? Those are creeds, but actual experience of the non-material reality. Bhakti Yoga, of course, will give you knowledge and experience of the non-material reality as well as the illusory so-called reality and the source of both the reality and the illusion. Such comprehensiveness, such depth, such profundity. It's often hard for people to understand that societies have existed that had as their number one priority self-realization. Indeed, that was the number one priority of the government. All government services were shaped around how to create and maintain a favorable society so the citizens could achieve their ultimate goal in life. Understanding the difference between matter and spirit and understanding the source of both. Let me share with you something from the fifth canto Srimad Bhagavatam, that encyclopedic bhakti text. There is described a chief executive named Gaia. And his administration is presented to us as a model. I'll give you some Sanskrit terms, but certainly I'll define them. The first thing that characterized Gaia, the head of state, was Poshana. That means giving protection and security to the citizens so that their personal property would not be disturbed by undesirable elements. He's maintaining a society so that people feel secure and protected. And in that way, they can peacefully focus on what is their real goal in life. So this is called Poshana, the providing of full protection and security to the citizens. Included in that Poshana is the chief executive seeing that there is sufficient food for all. Next is Prinana. Believe it or not, the chief executive, Gaia, would distribute gifts sometimes to the citizens to satisfy them. And then Upalalana. He would organize meetings with the citizens and satisfy the citizens with sweet words. And finally, something called Anushasana. The chief executive, Gaia, would gather the citizens together and instruct them how to be excellent citizens, how to improve their personal qualities and their interactions with others. So this shows you some insight into what a real human society is like. It's not about just income and defense. It's about elevating human beings. Now back to you as an individual. I'd like to speak to you as an individual. You've got X amount of years. What are you trying to achieve? What are you pursuing? What are you racing after? Are you sure you're going to be satisfied if you get it? And the chances are these days you're not going to get it. As you know, if you're a millennial or younger, yours is the first generation, the first American generation that will not surpass its parents in terms of material achievement, income, etc. So this is a challenge to anyone, because what am I trying to accomplish? My material opportunities are crumbling before my eyes. Pandemics, climate change, the threat of nuclear war is still there. Naturally, and I think I've explained this in our previous meetings, naturally you're thinking, why on my shift have all these problems appeared? Why can't I have a clear shot like previous generations at a clear shot at the gold? But I say to you, don't be depressed. A crisis presents enormous opportunity. You can rethink, reimagine, re-envision the whole human situation and your role in it. You can't live others' lives and they can't live your life, but you, in terms of how you live, can be an example showing others how not to just repeat the same mistakes in the name of happiness, pursuit of happiness. So it's a fascinating time for those of you who know how to seize the time. This is a popular mantra back in the 60s and 70s during the time of the Vietnam War and civil rights. And at that same time also, the environmental movement took birth, the first Earth Day. So activists would exhort one another, seize the time. Well, the time is still there for you to seize, but it's going to take a rethinking, as I said, a reimagination of what human beings are, what they should be accomplishing, and how they should be doing it together. If you all can contribute to that mission, then you'll turn a major rout, a major defeat into a victory. I think I've spoken before about a statement by an economist. He used to be at Stanford. Now he's at New York University. Paul Romer. He was the first one to coin that expression. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. So please think about that. Don't waste this crisis caused by the pandemic, caused by economic crunch time, caused by the arrival of the effects from climate change, which weren't supposed to arrive for another 20 or 30 years. I think about Bangladesh. A week or two ago, 1/4 of Bangladesh was underwater. Mumbai, flooded with rains, historic rains. And then California. Yes, I lived in Los Angeles. You've got a heat wave. You've got wildfires. You've got the pandemic. This is nature's way of shaking us up. So your generation has the impetus, the incentive to rethink this whole situation. Human beings have the numbers, but the numbers are not the problem. The quantity of human beings, as we said earlier, is not the problem. The problem is the quality. And who is addressing the quality of human beings? Who has a program to uplift human consciousness? This is why Bhakti Yoga is so important. It provides techniques for transformation. You change and your vision of others and the world changes. At the very least, you get beyond that illusory quintet. You get beyond identifying with such hallucinogenic externals: class, color, country, creed, culture. We need to be introduced to the science of the non-material self and the activities of the non-material self. Then we can really bring about change. And indeed, we need change. But that change has to come from a place of deep knowledge and experience. Non-material knowledge and non-material experience. This is what I was thinking when I started reading Bhagavad Gita as it is, the month after I graduated from university. I was looking. As many of you know, I had studied so much of every subject, trying to find the solution to all the world's problems. And by the time of graduation, I had given up. I realized there is no material solution. And then I started reading Bhagavad Gita as it is. And I was stunned. What a treasure house. So we need knowledge and we need the experience that the knowledge brings. Religious faith is not going to get it. There's some value to religious faith, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to produce the deep-rooted change that we need to bring about. I believe this. Well, what do you believe? Well, just tell me, regardless of your creed or whatever religion you identify with, are you the body, are you the mind, or are you something else? Oh, I don't know. They never talked about that at my church or temple or synagogue or mosque, you know. This is the problem. The fundamentals of spiritual science are missing. And therefore, how can people have the necessary fine qualities like being able to control the mind and senses? How many persons take that ability as necessary? When's the last time someone's come up to you and said, by the way, can you control your mind and senses? Are you crazy? What's that got to do with anything? This is our situation. And what to speak of someone coming up to you saying, can you control your mind and senses? How about, are you the master of your mind and senses? Oh, that sounds even more ludicrous. Who wants to be master of the mind and senses? That sounds like no fun at all. But only when there is the development of fine qualities will you see a change in the human species. Otherwise, we'll go on being an extractive species, renowned for our ability to extract from the earth all kinds of resources and will cause all kinds of problems. So we have extractive societies, and we ourselves are flesh-covered devices for burning fossil fuels. That's the reality. We can do much better. And the future is in your hands. How to reimagine, re-envision the human mission on this planet. It'll be exciting. There'll be victories, there'll be setbacks, but at least you'll know if you try to pursue this goal, you are actually being for real. Finally, I'll remind you a point I often bring up at the Mantra House. Being for real. Is it something considered valuable these days? I often ask the question, when's the last time you looked in someone's eyes or someone looked in your eyes and said, I'm for real? It sounds weird, doesn't it? Wait a minute. You don't have to be for real. It's not necessary. I don't mind you faking it. Let's pretend that, how about 50%? 50% for real and 50% faking. That's good enough for me. That's the way it is these days. Reality, being for real, is not is not a highly sought after achievement. But we need human beings to be for real. And that can only be done when we tune into our real self, our non-material self, and then from there make progress to understanding the supreme self, and thirdly, the relationship between the two. We are tiny particles of consciousness, and then there is the supreme consciousness and the relationship between the two. We need to make progress in that direction. So I thank you all for your kind attention. Maybe there are some questions.
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
Hey, Swamiji, thank you so much for your talk today. Where do you suggest to start making progress? That last point you made.
Two things: knowledge and lifestyle. I suggest that you get some bhakti yoga knowledge, and by applying that knowledge, your lifestyle will start to change, and then your experience will change. A main component of the bhakti experience is mantra meditation, sonic therapy. I highly recommend a daily Mahamantra meditation practice. That sound vibration is not ordinary. The Mahamantra sound vibration will purify your consciousness so you can see what's going on for the first time. It'll pull the cover off of our eyes, pull back the veil, and we can actually start to see how we can make genuine progress with our life. We do need knowledge, and we do need the lifestyle that applies the knowledge, because then we'll get experience. Nice question, Stephen. Thank you.
May I share something really quick?
Sure.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for that wonderful talk. Really appreciated it. A lot of lovely takeaways, and I really resonate with the idea that not the quantity, but just the quality of consciousness in people. And I kind of want to hear your thoughts and anyone's thoughts about this idea I had. Is that I guess that this potential for consciousness is inside all of us, right? And it lies dormant, or it gets eroded by society and the veil that they put over us. And we spend our whole lives learning what we're taught, so we can get back to our roots, back to basics, back to nature, that kind of stuff. And so I think you speak to spread knowledge, but you listen to spread wisdom. And when you hold space for someone and you listen to them with a lot of love and compassion, and hear what they have to offer the world and their gifts and their talents, and you engage them in that way, their light just shines through so much brighter, and then they can activate other people with their gifts. So what I've been trying to do is to really hold space for people and listen to them with my whole heart and see what they have to share. And then hopefully that gives them the confidence and self-love to then go light other people up and kind of engage, increase the kind of vibration and consciousness. So, well, wondering to hear what your thoughts about that.
Okay, Joshua. Very good. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm
Ruthie.
loving your talk. Yeah, hi. Hi, my question is, what are your thoughts on love during COVID-19?
Awesome love begins with understanding that this body has realities. And whether you get COVID-19 or COVID 101, the body can endure. So if we're looking for real love and happiness, we need to have some experience beyond the temporary body and mind, because the body and mind are mechanisms that will disappoint us if we're so attached to them as providers of our fulfillment. Now, certainly, Ruthie, you got to take care of your body. Just like, it's a common sense example. If I think I'm this sweater and I just take care of my sweater, but I ignore the rest of me, I've made a huge mistake. So if we just deal with our physiology and psychology and neglect our non-material self and the love that's there between the non-material self and the supreme self, then we've made a drastic mistake. Everyone wants love, but is love just a physiological, psychological, buzzy kind of thing? Or is there something much more substantial about love that we're missing? Now, often people will say that, hey, well, even if it's just temporary, if it's just a buzzy kind of thing, I'll take it. But you're meant for something higher. You're meant for something better. So use the present challenging circumstances as impetus to go to a higher level. That's my recommendation. Bhakti yoga gives you a chance for the love supreme. And when there's the love supreme, then you know how to love all living entities, not even just humans. Okay, Ruthie.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a nice day.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes. Ashish.
Thank you for coming and talking. And yeah, my question is, what do you think about the role of trauma? Like, how much of the current state is based off of ignorance and lust, and how much of it do you think is trauma?
What do I think about trauma is your question? Is that your question? What do I think about trauma?
Ashish?
In the current
Okay, looks
state
like
of the global population.
okay, you're breaking up for me, Ashish. Can you type it on the chat? Any other questions?
Maharaj, I have a question.
Yes.
Uh, so you're advocating starting with yourself, picking up a mantra meditation practice and really deepening your consciousness. But what about the apparent really strong material inertia in getting in the way of like actually making a change, like in the world that people can notice?
The power of the Maha Mantra will give you the clarity of vision and the strength to be a real bearer of transformation. I'm never saying that we should neglect the necessary external changes. But what I am saying is the most important change is internal. The two should be together in an ideal society. Without the internal change, the external changes won't last. We found that out way back in the 60s and 70s. Without internal change, even the agents of change themselves become ruined by uncontrolled mind and senses and just sink back into the usual material mirage. You know, the boomers, look what happened to them, you know. They get so much of the blame for screwing up the world the way it is now, but these same boomers back in the 60s and 70s, they were advocates of social transformation, stopping wars, civil rights, environmentalism, women's rights. That was all the 60s and 70s. What happened to those guys? Those same guys went on to make the mess we have now. So my point is that without inner transformation, the external transformation doesn't sustain. But there are changes we need in the external. There's no doubt about that. Even though those 5 I named, that illusory quintet, class, color, creed, country, culture, although they're external, they're causing problems. So if you really want to be an agent of change, be holistic. The inner change and the outer change, both. Be both. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, I see Ashish's question here. What do you think of the role of trauma in the current state of the global population? The human species is in a critical situation. It used to be, let's say last year, I would talk about the apocalyptic twins, climate change and the threat of nuclear weapons. In between those twins has come another, pandemics. So now you have an apocalyptic trio. And again, this is human caused. 75% of emerging infectious diseases are zoonotic in nature. That means, zoonotic means viruses jumping from animals to human beings because human beings are improperly associating with animals by invading their habitat or live animal markets or raising livestock for slaughter. 75% of emerging infectious diseases are zoonotic, jumping from animals to humans. Did you know, by the way, speaking of trauma, in 1967, the US Surgeon General announced that there'll be there'll be no more infectious diseases. That time, that age is finished. Not only did the Surgeon General of the USA make that announcement, we've reached the end of infectious diseases, but prestigious medical schools at Harvard and Yale shut down their infectious disease departments. So I say this to point out the human hubris. We think that we've solved problems, and then the problems just double back on us, triple back on us, because we have a distorted aim of life. So that is the real trauma. Human beings are not achieving their natural purposes. All right, David has asked, what are ways to balance the spiritual self and the material self? We have to take care of our psychological health. We have to take care of our physical health. Most important is our spiritual health. This is the holistic package. We don't ignore the body or the mind, even though we're not the body and the mind. We don't ignore them. We keep our equipment in tip-top shape as much as possible for the purpose of achieving the real goal of human life. Anything else? So it's been a pleasure being with you all, and I'm longing to get back to California. See you all at Mantra House and other places. But right now, this is the best we can do over Zoom. But still, it's so nice seeing your faces. So I thank you for your kind attention. Hare Krishna.